In today's video, I'm gonna try to make $1,000 in 72 hours. I have no course to sell you, and in this video, I'm gonna start how you can also start your own business generating revenue in under 3 days. All right, this officially marks the start of the challenge. I just set a timer to go off on Monday. It is currently Sunday, so that's 72 hours. You can see it right here. And hopefully by the time this timer goes off, we've actually made about $1,000. So it's the very first hour and I have no time to waste. So the very first thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and contact Ryan and Dylan Ott, who I plan to be my co-founders. Both of them are extremely technical and hardworking people, and I think they would be a really, really good fit for this project that I want to do. And most importantly, they have a really big following on TikTok, which hopefully I will be able to take some advantage of later on. Right now, I'm gonna text them, make sure that they can meet sometime soon. We're gonna spend a little time brainstorming and really figuring out a really good idea that we wanna go ahead with. So once the challenge actually started, we decided to find a niche and find some sort of solution that would be able to use the expertise that we already had. So something that the group had in common was that everyone had just gone through the college admissions process. And we were all very, very technical, which means that we knew how to build websites, we knew how to build apps, and generally we just knew how to make really, really professional looking solutions. So with no time to waste, we decided to look into a niche that we already knew extremely well, which was students applying to go to college. And even though we understood this niche very, very well, as we had been in this niche before ourselves for the past 2 years of our lives, we still decided to do a little bit more market research and actually talk to current students right now to see if there's some sort of problem that we could really tackle right now. Because imagine building something that customers just don't want to pay. So we really wanted to make sure that we did very thorough market research before we built anything else. So something that we found while we interviewed students was that they really struggled with making essays, they really struggled in finding ECs, and lastly, they really struggled in creating an identity for themselves when creating a college application. And they would just sort of write their essays, not really being mindful of this, and not really understanding what a spike is. So for a quick explanation, for very top colleges like Harvard, MIT, or UPenn, something you need to do when developing your application is finding a spike. And this just means finding some field or something that you're very good at that no one else is very good at as well, or just finding something that's very unique to you. We understood that most students really struggled in this sort of section in their college applications, so we really wanted to make some sort of solution for this. So before we actually started building anything, we actually went ahead and did some market research. We found that current competitors, which are largely college counselors, were extremely costly, sometimes costing thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, and the average person just can't afford this. So we decided to try to develop some sort of solution that could go against these college counselors at a much more affordable price. So now that we sort of had these pieces of information in our head, we started to slowly develop and slowly start to see what our final product would be, which would sort of end up being a software as a service product where students would be able to put in their stats and their extracurriculars. And at the end, the software would provide students with a spike, several EC ideas, and lastly, several essay ideas so that they could create a much more powerful and a much more unique college application than they would have had before. And this idea sort of fit the expertise that we already had, and it fit a very specific niche. So in creating something like this would fit exactly our section of expertise. And on top of that, it would be creating something pretty unique to the market, which we had not found anything near that in our time doing market research. So I just got off call with Dylan and Ryan. Sorry for the location change, I'm downstairs right now. And we talked a lot about different ideas, and we talked to different students applying to college right now, and we really wanted to find the best possible solution. And now that we have something a little bit more clear in our head of what exactly we want to do, we're gonna go ahead and just not waste any time. I'm about to go upstairs right after this video and start working on our landing page, so we can start getting potential customers coming in, start getting feedback on the idea, and start sort of going from there. And now that we had a much more solid idea of what we wanted to build, we decided to start the second step, which is value development. So in the last video, I really talked a whole lot about Framer and GitHub Pages, which are sort of free ways that you can make a landing page. And if you don't know what a landing page is, it's just sort of the very first website that people see when they go on to search your product. So I'm gonna give a quick example right now. And basically the main point of a landing page is to get as many conversions as possible, right? So anyone that goes on your webpage, you wanna try to convert them into paying users. And this is a really difficult to do task, but the easiest and best way to do this is just to sort of simply show your product, show what's unique about your product, and then add a link to your actual app. So to do this as fast as possible, because we had absolutely no time to lose, we found a template online, we made a copy of it, and we started customizing it on our own. Something else that was really important that we had to add onto our landing page was adding back the problem, right? Because if someone goes into a landing page, they see their problem right in front of them, which again would be sort of finding their niche, but the only solution to this being very, very costly alternatives, and then providing a simple and easy solution for them. And that's sort of how we decided to design our website. And on top of that, we decided to have a sort of simple demonstration video and sort of a step-by-step guide on how you could use IVFi and how everything would come together. Of course, this step came after we actually developed everything, so I'm jumping ahead a little bit here. But if you're ever creating your own sort of landing page, then I highly, highly recommend you have some sort of demonstration video so people sort of know what they're gonna be paying. And lastly, we just had our pricing at the bottom. Again, this is not something you have to do, but the main reason why we had this is because our unique value proposition, or the thing that made us unique, was our very, very low price. So that's why we had it directly on our landing page and not into the actual app. So again, I just want to reiterate, the most important thing you want to do when creating a landing page, which is what we really did, was show the product and show what makes your product unique. And once you have those two things out of the way, then your conversion rates are going to increase tenfold. Okay, and then now I want to talk a little bit about our branding. So I'm sure you can see that the name of our software is called IVFi, and we decided to name it IVFi for a couple of reasons. Firstly, IVFi is just a short, simple name, something that you can remember, something that people can tell their friends about, and that's sort of a big part of marketing, but I'll get into that in a second. And also, IVFi sort of tells a story, right? Where it's like you want to IVFi your application and just straight away you know exactly what our product does with almost no need for explanation. So that's what you want to sort of look for when creating a name. You want to find a name that sort of explains your product while also being short and catchy. And on top of that, we wanted to lean into a simple but effective design, and that's sort of reflected on our landing page. Because there's no really complex moving parts, there's nothing really too difficult to look at. Everything is just sort of laid out there very simply. And again, this sort of all goes with our brand. We're trying to build up our brand image here, trying to build trust so we can convert customers into paying. And after all of that, we had a very tiring day, so unfortunately we did have to end a little bit early. However, we did make significant progress and we were extremely excited for day 2.
Okay, so this is hour 22. It's a little over 10 a.m. today, and we are a little behind schedule. We have a good idea, we finished the landing page, but we really haven't had a whole lot of work done on the actual product yet. So Dylan has done a little bit of work on it, but today we really want to lock in and do about 90% of the actual app done. The app itself isn't too complicated, so we are kind of hoping that we will be able to finish most of it today. Because after this, we're only going to have one more day to market, and then after that, the challenge is over. So today we're really going to lock in. We're going to sit down and lock in. I'm going to meet them at the library right now, and I'll hit you with an update in a couple of hours.
The very first thing we did when creating a software was create a React app. Now, React is sort of a framework that I very highly recommend to anyone just trying to create any sort of product out there, especially for software as a service. And for some context, React is an open source JavaScript library that allows you to use a lot of components and a whole lot of other things that just makes building a whole lot simpler and saved me and Dylan and Ryan a whole lot of time. So if you're creating any sort of software as a service app, having React is the very first thing that I highly, highly recommend you use. So on top of React, for our login authentication, we use Google Login. We didn't want to overcomplicate things and have a million different logins, and we knew that 90% of people just like using Google, and that really wouldn't be an issue. And coding any sort of manual login system would have taken a very, very long time. So fortunately for us, Google Login is very fast and very convenient to code. All you really have to go to is go to your Google terminal, set up some things in the background, put your API key over to the React app, and from there you just have the login done. And to actually collect the data of our users, so of course we want to store their email, their name, their extracurriculars, etc., we needed some sort of database. And the database that we decided to use was something called Supabase, which is the most convenient database that I've ever seen. It's really, really simple to set up and connect into your React app. So if you have any more questions about that, leave them in the comments and I'll be sure to answer them. So very fortunately for us, we didn't really need any complex actions, which meant that we didn't have to invest any time whatsoever on creating a Python server or anything or any real backend, as almost every single function of the app could just be made on the Supabase and just by changing around some variables. So we skipped a really big time-consuming step. So to actually build our app, we use something called JetCN UI, which is a very simple and effective UI to build. If I were to remake this in the future, I probably wouldn't use JetCN UI just because of how simple it is. But it did sort of go with our branding, so it did kind of end up working out for us. And lastly, we initially focused on a single core feature, because what we found is that building many, many features at a time just sort of makes your app a little bit too overcomplicated, and it'll make less people want to use it. So the biggest piece of advice is to just build on a single big feature and everything else will come after that. So let me actually explain a little bit more what exactly we're building and what exactly that core feature is. So that core feature that we were building was a review of your grade, your extracurriculars, and your intellectual curiosity. And this main feature would eventually serve as the backbone for many features that would come in the future, which include sort of the essay advice, the extracurricular idea, and lastly, finding a niche or a spike for you. The way that we imagine the user base, the user workflow would be firstly, the user would log in using Google Authentication. Then they would be able to put in all of their information, which includes, again, their name, their extracurriculars, what school they come from, their stats, etc., etc. And then once they had all of that, we would be able to set a 24 or 48 hour time limit for them. And then after a certain amount of time had passed, we would review it ourselves manually, and then add something in the and then add our comments on the Supabase, and then the app would automatically update and sort of give them their feedback based on whatever we wrote on the Supabase. So to actually do this and not have to manually go into the Supabase every single time and have to manually change everything, we decided to quickly create an admin page. Of course, this admin page was sort of blocked where, an everyday person can just go to ivy5.com/admin and just sort of poke around and change everything. We had to add sort of a layer of protection where only certain people logged in could actually access this page. So when building an admin page, we just decided to have a very simple sort of page just showing every single user. And then when you clicked on the user, you could see the user's stats, and you could also change their feedback. And then once you updated their feedback, it would actually update the page for them on their side. And that's sort of how we actually were able to change and edit so many people's essays for them without actually having to go into the backend ourselves and do everything there.
Quick update, I am back home and we have started to make some progress on the app. I'll show you some of what we have done so far. So here's some of the code. You don't really need to worry about it right now. You can see some errors, but this is just some pseudo errors. They're not really anything urgent. So we were able to actually buy the domain. So you can see here, we have the app.ivy5.me. And this is where we actually host our app. And if you just go to ivy5.me, then this actually takes you to our landing page, which is very, very convenient. And it's a pretty good looking landing page right now. And if you press the get started, it takes you to our actual app. Then you can sign in with Google and everything works pretty well so far. There are a couple of bugs right now. We just got the Google sort of working, the Google authentication working, and this is sort of what we're seeing right now. You can see there are a couple of bugs right now, like review date has passed. The email us looks kind of buggy right now. But in general, we have made some pretty good progress. I'll probably do a deeper dive into everything a little bit later on.
And now that we had the majority of the app sort of working, the rest of the day was just sort of bug testing and making sure that everything worked very, very smoothly. And this was the most time-intensive part of the entire process. Just going through, fixing any bugs, making sure that everything went smoothly. So that's just sort of the harsh reality of developing a software as a service application, where 90% of it is going to be the hard work of just going in and solving bugs and making sure that every little small thing is perfect before you actually go out and launch a product. And honestly, there's just not a whole lot else to say. This was probably the grindiest and most boring part of the entire process. But if you sort of like doing this kind of thing, then maybe software as a service is something for you. And the final step was to actually acquire clients. Now, this is the part where most people sort of really mess up and don't really know what to do and their project is just dead in the water. But fortunately for us, we did end up spending a lot of the first day making sure that this is a product that people actually want and people would actually pay for. So we knew that we sort of had a golden product idea. But before I really get into things, I do want to mention a really important fact that even though we made this entire project with $0, I did want to say that we put the revenue through an already existing LLC. And typically LLCs do cost around $100. And buying in an LLC is the one thing I 100% recommend. So one of the main reasons why I chose Dylan and Ryan to co-found Ivy5 with me is just because both of them had a very big following on TikTok. And when we were to actually release Ivy5, we would be able to already have a big platform and sort of instantly be able to market Ivy5 for free. Now, I realize most of you don't have this sort of big connection of someone who has a big following on TikTok. And there are other ways that we successfully were able to market. And one of those ways was through a LinkedIn campaign. For LinkedIn, both me and Dylan have a relatively big following. And the way we did this was building up our brand by helping a lot of students before beforehand. And this is something that you can do very, very easily. And the way that you can do this is by providing some sort of value to students. And students are gonna be very open to giving away their emails. And from there, you can give whatever product or resource that you were sort of promising them. And on top of that, you can just have a sort of like marketing thing at the bottom, which is something that we did a lot of times. And even with that sort of low-key marketing, it still worked extremely well. It's something that we would recommend.
So now that we have the app done, we actually want to go ahead and start marketing. So some of the ways that we're going to do that is, firstly, both me and Dylan have a relatively big LinkedIn. So you can see that some of my impressions this one did pretty badly. It got 6,000 impressions. This one got 40,000. This one up here got 100,000 impressions. And the general way that we want to do marketing with LinkedIn is that we want to give a resource to people. So here we're just saying, like, if you give us your email, then we'll send you some sort of opportunity, or we'll send you some sort of resource or something along those lines. And alongside that resource, we're also going to send a small IB5 promotion at the bottom of the email. So if people really, really like our resources, they can just scroll down and see, like, we're going to send an email saying, like, hey, if you really like these resources, check out IB5. And that's sort of the general strategy we're going to go with for emails. Now, I mentioned earlier that Dylan has a relatively big TikTok, and here you can see that he has over 100,000 followers, reaching 5 million likes, and he's going to post a video pretty soon about IB5, and hopefully it does at least somewhat well.
Okay, so unfortunately, this is where we hit our biggest roadblock, because what we realized is that we built IB5 around one-time payments, which is dead in the water idea for a lot of software as a service startups, just because it's really hard to continue to build a customer base if you don't have customers coming back again and again. And because we had it as a one-time payment system and not really as a monthly recurring revenue system, we couldn't justify spending a lot on marketing. However, the previous methods that we did say did work extremely well. We can use a lot of scalable ways to market IB5. And it's probably the biggest regret I have when building IB5, just because IB5 could have been so much bigger if we had built it around a monthly recurring revenue system. Lastly, we're on step 4, which is just scaling and business reevaluation. So we quickly got some initial revenue through the TikToks and the email campaign, and we started to get a lot of feedback from users as we were specifically asking them for feedback. And based on this feedback, we did end up building many, many other features, and this was all throughout the last day. And all in all, adding these features just helped us grow even more as it made customers even more happy. IB5 even started spreading through word of mouth.
The 72-hour timer just went off, and unfortunately we couldn't make $1,000, but we were pretty close. Hopefully I can put what we made somewhere around here. But overall, even though we weren't able to hit our goal of $1,000, we still made a lot of money. I believe it was somewhere around the $900 mark. It might change by the time this video comes out. But overall, this is just a very exciting and very fun challenge. I probably won't be continuing IB5 just because it's very difficult to justify spending a lot on marketing. We use a lot of sort of like marketing hacks to get initial customers. But if we wanted to get even more and more customers, that would mean we would have to spend more money in order to get better marketing. And because we didn't set up IB5 in a way that really justifies MRR, then it probably won't be worth the investment into actually going into marketing. So that's probably a big lesson I learned, that if I am sort of to do any SaaS in the future, I might either make it either more MRR oriented or make the product cost a little bit more money so we can actually justify spending more for marketing. So yeah. With that out of the way, the challenge is over.
Okay, so some big takeaways that we found during the 72-hour experiment was that email marketing was actually surprisingly successful. We got around 10 to 15 customers just from email marketing. Again, it was a little hard to track because we didn't have any built-in trackers into the URL, but that's sort of our estimation, where we did get around 15 customers from email marketing. And on top of that, Dylan and Ryan's TikToks were also extremely successful. From those TikToks alone, we got over an additional 30 customers. So that was a huge success. And again, every customer here is worth between $25 to $50. So every customer is a big win. So unfortunately, we probably won't continue IB5 because again, we didn't really find a path forward with MRR, and it would be hard to justify spending a lot more on marketing and trying to get customers, because oftentimes it costs a lot more than $50 to get a single person onto a product. And yeah, so a big takeaway for me personally is that in the future, I will probably end up building either with a value higher per customer so we can actually justify having ad spends, or having an MRR system where we can just keep on building our customer base and also really justify having bigger ad spend. So there you have it. After 72 hours, even though we didn't completely hit our goal of $1,000, we were extremely close, and I would call this experiment a giant success. So if you found this video helpful, make sure to comment any questions and subscribe for more business tips and tricks.